So I'm going to ask each of our panellists just to say a few words about what they think the purpose of collaboration is and what are the specific advantages of collaboration that we might be able to deliver, not just obviously between colleagues on the stage, but with you and that broader regional and international collaboration. Sally, first to you, if I might.
Thank you, Kate. So just for those of you who don't know, so Cadent is a gas distribution network, so we deliver natural gas to homes in the northwest, the Midlands, the east of England and North London. And we are focused on transitioning our networks to hydrogen. And that will happen over a number of different stages. And actually we're primarily at the moment, or I'm primarily focused on industry and how we can allow industry to decarbonise using low carbon hydrogen. And actually, thinking about Barry's points about why this is such a good place for hydrogen, I would totally agree with that. So we've just started a piece of work which is entirely based on collaboration actually. It's called Capital Hydrogen, and it's our programme to transition the gas networks in the east of England and North London to hydrogen. And we launched a feasibility study in October, and that was only possible because of the collaboration that we have with the Thames Estuary Growth Board, with industry all along the north bank of the Thames, for example. And just thinking specifically about what we were trying to achieve with that, in order to bring on that hydrogen production and that potential hydrogen import into Thurrock, so we're aware of 8 different organisations that are either looking to produce hydrogen in this area or to import it. In order to bring on that hydrogen production in the context of industry, we need to talk to the industry about whether they've thought about using hydrogen to decarbonise. So these are really heavy natural gas users. So it's organisations like Tate and Lyle Sugars in Newham, right? They use a huge amount of natural gas every day to refine sugar to make golden syrup. And by bringing Tate and Lyle and all of the other heavy industries along the north bank of the Thames into our programme, we can start to talk to them about what their forecasts might look like for hydrogen. So how quickly could they transition away from natural gas? And then we can bring them together with the producers and the potential importers who are thinking, well, I know this is a really good opportunity and I can import hydrogen here, but where's my market? So for Cadent and for the Capital Hydrogen Programme, our focus is initially on heavy industry, but also transport operators. So we're not, we don't do a huge amount with transport at the moment as a gas distribution network, but I think we will be involved in the future in helping to provide hydrogen for refuelling. So, and then of course the question is, will hydrogen be used in our homes to heat them? And obviously we have someone from Worcester Bosch here today. And so when the government makes that decision in 2026, this is going to be about, we already collaborate hugely with boiler manufacturers. So yeah, it's all based on an ecosystem, as you mentioned at the beginning, Kate, and yeah, hugely important.
Fantastic, great project. And what a lovely segue Sally just gave me then into our next speaker. So Alex, thank you to you, thanks.
Is the microphone working? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Worcester Bosch has developed a 100% hydrogen boiler. So obviously heat is a massive requirement on energy, especially this time of year, early in the morning when it gets very cold. So yeah, certainly collaboration is a massive focus for us with the DNOs throughout the UK. And certainly we are pushing as much as possible with lobbying government to try and get that over the line. The decision at the moment has been delayed to 2026. But what has been encouraging is that all the development has been here in the UK, at Worcester, with our own engineers, British engineering. And I think, possibly later throughout the day, looking at the opportunity for jobs and economical gain within the local area and nationally. But what I thought I'd also highlight is the fact that our current gas boilers that use natural gas, if we only had 20% blend of hydrogen into that would be the equivalent of taking 2.5 million cars off the road. Mm-hmm. If we could do that. And so we're very much reliant on, well, there's another session on production, but we can innovate what's in the home, but we're just waiting for, give us the hydrogen and then we can prosper. So it's a big factor. And also I want to highlight the fact that by developing a 100% hydrogen boiler, that the emissions is 0 carbon dioxide, and I wanted to highlight that because a lot of people sort of think there's still loads of emissions, but not just carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide. which is the biggest killer for gas safety issues in the UK. So actually, I would argue that our current boilers today can be safer in the future with hydrogen. And also just, some collaboration points to pick up what you said about, we liaise a lot with installers and industry and tradesmen and people in social housing and local authorities. And so they want to get some answers in regards to how they're going to reduce their emissions. There's a big topic at the moment about landlord properties to be energy rated EPC Band C by the year, I think it's 2028. And how are they going to get to those energy ratings? And we have also collaborated again with the DNOs with a campaign called Hello Hydrogen, and it's about educating the consumer, because I think there's a lot with the consumer. Even outside, someone said, "Oh, that bus is a bomb," and that sort of rhetoric probably isn't helpful. And by us saying that actually hydrogen-ready appliances, 100% hydrogen boilers are actually safer than today's. Gas isn't safe, petrol isn't safe, electric isn't safe if it's in the wrong hands. But I think in the UK we've got a great regulator, and we've got some great people here that can keep it on a straight line and prosper into the future.
Fantastic. Two things there that are interesting, aren't they? The 2% to the 100%, we're all on a journey, aren't we? So I think one of the things you might pick up today on is the kind of transition and the speed of transition, but the safety thing is really interesting. So I'm also the chair at Teesside International Airport, and the bulk of our ground handling stuff is run on hydrogen now. And you couldn't be in a more regulated environment than airside at an airport. And I figure if something's safe airside at an airport, do you know what? It's safe. So I think there's something there as well around the narrative that we use around hydrogen, which is quite interesting, that needs to keep reinforcing the safety issue. The points you made there about safety, I think, are really, really super sound. Thank you for that. Bob, to you.
Okay, so Rhizome to Hydrogen Limited is a company we formed out of our traditional business, which was Rhizome Energy. So we've basically been working in oil and gas and marine engineering for many years, but when COVID came along we thought we needed to do something in sustainable energy and net zero, so we started to look at hydrogen, and we spent a lot of time in-house developing our own hydrogen refueling system, looking at electrolyzers, compressors and whatever, because at the end of the day, apart from myself, everyone in the company is under 35, so oil and gas would see me out, but it won't see them out. So we've been busy with that. As in terms of collaboration, what we found is for some of the new technologies we need to get in touch with the universities. We've been in touch with Kent University here, and then we need to be able to deliver equipment. We need to be able to sell that equipment, so there needs to be demand. And as we've seen here, we've got the vehicle companies here today for the commercial vehicles, which is where we think it's going to go, because we're primarily looking at refueling. So and then we need to sort of develop alliances with people like the Thames Estuary Growth Board in order to see what's going on locally. So we're based in Dartford, so we just want to see the market grow for hydrogen really, so that we can start supplying equipment.
Perfect. It's great to see businesses coming in with that real commercial drive. What you're talking about there is a commercial opportunity, isn't it? And that's great, because this isn't just going to be driven by, goodwill and lentils, is it? Do you know what I mean? This is about businesses and seeing businesses there, really seeing a commercial opportunity, super strong. Barry, to you. Thank you.
Collaboration is absolutely essential. So we know that this station was a sort of first generation station. We're working with all of the component supply chain to that station, because everybody is trying to improve, everybody is trying to scale up. In the last 2 years, hydrogen has just, I don't want to use the word exploded, but so 10 years ago we would go to the city and we would have the begging bowl out to raise 3.5-4 million quid to keep the company going. Over the last 2 years, ITM's raised nearly $500 million, and that's happening all over the world. There's lots of funds now. In hydrogen, you can go into a city fund and raise 20 million quid for your business tomorrow, like that, no problem. But you need to collaborate. You need to collaborate with the supply chain on the technology, but even more so, you need to collaborate with the people providing the demand. People think hydrogen is another gas that you use like compressed natural gas. It's not. It's got incredibly specific characteristics that make it very challenging to produce it, to handle it, and to deliver it into vehicles. Germany will lead the way on the vehicles. We will go to 700 bar on HGVs. We will go to liquid hydrogen delivered into the stations to then go into the vehicles. We can't do that without collaborating with the people making the equipment and the people who make the tanks that go into the vehicles as well. Again, we've got a fantastic supply chain in the UK with Luxfer tanks, one of the leaders in the world. Canadian owned, but a lot of capability in the UK. They've got the funding and the planning to build a new factory in Nottingham purely to do the class 4 tanks into the vehicles for hydrogen. Everybody is investing in the supply chain, but the whole supply chain has to collaborate. So from your point of view, one of the biggest challenges we have is land and power for a station. We need the locations and we need the local grid. Certainly if we're going to generate on site. So again, right through the port, you tend to have really robust high voltage grids. Absolutely ideal for generating hydrogen. You've got the offshore wind coming onshore. At those nodes is where you will be making the bulk of the hydrogen. But those people providing the renewable energy need to be in sync with the people making the vehicles for the demand. We've talked about some collaborations there and some people doing great work. Anyone who's not looked at JCB, go and look at what JCB are doing. The Bamford family have invested hundreds of millions of pounds in hydrogen to make their own hydrogen internal combustion engine, and you can't convert a petrol or a diesel engine to hydrogen. You just can't do it. Lots of people have started from scratch. JCB have been doing it for many years now. The Bamford family have vertically integrated all of their operations through their own investments, from renewable energy to the right bus that's parked in the car park outside. It's that level of collaboration right across the industry that's needed.
No, that's great. And that point around collaboration to secure investment is one of those key drivers behind the Living Labs I mentioned earlier, that ability for us to get those businesses and supply chains to collaborate together and then to link them into investors. So super, super important. But your point about sites is really interesting. We've just done a huge piece of analysis of sites, potential sites across the estuary, which is now complete, and in May of next year we're launching the investment platform, which is going to bring that information together. So it's about bringing the industry together, bringing the wherewithal and knowledge about sites and the investors together. So huge launch next May at UK Reef for those of you that will be there. Okay, fantastic. Let's open it up to some questions. You've heard some really interesting...
Can I just make one more point?
Yes, please.
The one body that we've not mentioned on collaboration is the government. And some of the things that the government have done over the last 10 years have actually blocked hydrogen and the deployment of hydrogen. So one of the main incentives for providing hydrogen at the pump for vehicles is something called the Renewable Transport Fuel Obligation that will subsidise the hydrogen going into the vehicle. They had the same system in continental Europe as well. There were 3 rules relaxed in continental Europe relating to the additionality of the green energy, the locality on the grid, and what we call temporal correlation. So at our stations where we're using green hydrogen, we have to match our consumption of electricity to a green hydrogen source every 30 minutes. So to do that on our station at Birmingham, we have to have 4 power purchase agreements to make sure that we produce green hydrogen. That assumes that the 3 that we're not using, when we're using the one of them, we can sell back into the grid at the cost that we're paying. Can't be done. It's virtually impossible. In Europe, they relaxed that to a month. Makes it very easy. You only need 1 PPA. It makes your business case a lot more competitive. We're working in global supply chains in hydrogen, and we're already at a disadvantage to the continent of Europe. We've been lobbying the government, and lots of other people have been lobbying the government on that. Up at Doncaster last week, we had the main guy from the DFT responsible for hydrogen and heavy transport. He couldn't answer the question as to why that was not relaxed in line with what's going on in Europe. So in terms of global supply chains, we're already at a disadvantage.
So shock, horror. Barry has said this morning that the government is making something not easy. Barry, we hear that loud and clear. I think what we probably need to do is as growth board, and there's a number of my colleagues here today, and I'm going to ask them to identify themselves before we close this session, is we need to take a note of the things that you guys say where we think we need to have a greater influence with government, because I'm government appointed, which is quite handy at times like this. What it also means is we have a really good dialogue with government. So I think we should start to take a note of some of these things where lobbying is important, and then we will speak to the relevant secretaries of state and government about getting some of this stuff moved. So let's take that away as a first action, and I will commit to doing that on your behalf. Thank you for that, Barry. I know about the issue you've just spoken about. It's bloody complicated and not helpful. Okay, let's take some Q&As from the audience. We've got a roving mic. Even better, thank you. Questions? Helena. Can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi everyone, I'm Hilary from Ikigai. We are the advisors to the Distributed Hydrogen Ecosystem, and I will be rabbiting on later about what we're doing as far as living those are concerned. But I have a difficult question for the panel generally, but also following up on what Barry has been talking about. The feedback that we get from aspects of the supply chain, and particularly I have to say when it comes to heavy goods vehicles, is that the market for the sort of 32 to 44 tonne range, which is the predominant usage within the estuary and nationally, is probably, we're not going to see supply coming into Europe until 2025-26, and the UK is at a disadvantage because we are right-hand drive, and there is a perception that the government is not making it easy for growth to happen in the supply chain as far as those vehicles are concerned. I feel, and I'm going to talk about it later, but I feel like there's a huge opportunity to create national champions here for those sorts of vehicles. But I wondered if you could elaborate, Barry, on whether you think there are some solutions there, and how collaboration can help to deliver that supply chain faster in the UK.
Okay. So Barry, if you just solve that one immediately in the UK.
There's a much bigger problem than left or right-hand drive. Anyone who's driven around the UK for the last 20 years will know that there's loads of left-hand drive vehicles been on our roads, big trucks. I don't see that as a problem. There's an even bigger problem. We don't have a manufacturer of those trucks in the UK at the moment. Now, the Zero Emission Road Freight Demonstrator Grant Scheme is making all of the same mistakes that the UK H2 Mobility Scheme made for cars. So the grant call goes out. We're looking for small consortiums all over the country that will take some trial vehicles to put heavy goods vehicles with fuel cells in them on the road. 5 here, 5 there, 10 here. No manufacturer will come to the UK to support those vehicles because they're not going to put a service station in, doing the maintenance or the safety checks on those vehicles if they're spread all over the country in small numbers. What they should have done is they should have just gone out there, put an advert out and said, right, we want a logistics company to take 100 trucks in one location, and everybody will learn from it. We'll release all the data, all the TCO, no problem, but we need at least 100 in one location. We're currently looking at a project in mainland Europe, and it's exactly that. 100 trucks, 4 logistics companies, same location, land next to the main arterial road, renewable energy. So you need to go to Lutterworth or Cannock or another logistics park where you've got an awful lot of heavy goods vehicles and say, at least 100 in that location, Hyzon, Toyota, DAF, come and put a garage there to do the maintenance. They are not coming for little groups of 5 trucks here and there across the country, and that's going to put us back. We won't do anything realistically in HGVs till 2030. They'll do it all in Europe, they'll prove out the technology, and then it'll come to the UK. Under the ZERF scheme, they were going to try and get Hyzon to come. Hyzon have refused. So then we got Toyota and DAF to volunteer to bring 20 each. Toyota have dropped out, so we're down to 20 DAF. We've got electric trucks that will retrofit, and you've got HVS up in Glasgow that are still on the drawing board with a tractor unit. All the same mistakes made over again. We're not learning the lessons. The team at Bays that are handling that grant scheme are very young, they're inexperienced, and they don't understand what it takes to put a fleet of vehicles on the road. So all the same mistakes, again, we're way behind Europe.
So that team at Bays have just gone on my to-do list of people to have a conversation with.
I'll send you the contact details.
Yeah, okay, nice. On it. I just want to remind you as well, remind all of us that, so we're talking here about kind of trucks, aren't we, and HGVs and stuff like that, but what we're actually, and we're saying that Europe's way ahead of us and we're going to be way behind. What we're saying implicit in that is we are going to be way behind on our overall energy resilience in the country. That's the point. It's not just about HGVs. It's about, and if that was one thing I took away from the NLIT conference that I was mentioned earlier, is that it's about resilience. And this is part of national energy resilience, not just about whether you've got a clean truck or a dirty truck on the road. And if we're talking about being behind Europe, lagging in that way, that's where we're going to lag on overall resilience.
Can I just
this is really
say something on that
Thank
as well?
you.
It's probably just touching on your part, but in terms of the infrastructure in the UK, the gas infrastructure in the UK is the best in the world for its size. 280,000 kilometres of pipework. You know, it's a 60-year legacy investment that we've made. You know, by changing that or going down an alternative route would be absolute disastrous. And I think ourselves, together with the automotive and vehicles, should club together a lot better, because actually, if scalability does go to the level of vehicles going to hydrogen, homes going to hydrogen with their boilers, then surely the price, will come down in due course. And having that energy independence and less reliant on importing in gas or other fuel types from various parts of the world, which is obviously not environmentally friendly in its case. If we can produce it here, then it's going to be a lot more environmentally friendly and give us a lot more resilience, as you say.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's just take a second question. Thank you. This gentleman here, please. Thank you very much. Again, if you could just say who you are and where you're from, kind of thing, that'd be great.
Okay, so my name is Doug Pinckney. I have been, I used to work for the electricity supply industry, but as you can tell, I retired. The one thing that concerns me is we're putting the cart before the horse. There's been some comments briefly made on stage here, but without a huge amount of surplus green electricity, none of this is going to get off the ground. Now, there are some bright spots. I read yesterday that the Rolls-Royce modular nuclear plant is likely to go somewhere in Scotland. Bradwell Power Station, out the window off to your left, is a fantastic site for a modular nuclear power station. It's got fantastic HV connections, no power station there now. So, all this is possible. Can anybody on the committee here satisfy us or give us some idea of whether we're likely to have a surplus green electricity supply in this country in the medium future?
Okay, big old question there. Big old question there. Who wants to say thank you, Sally?
Okay, so I'll probably address it in a slightly different way. So what we're essentially asking is, will there be enough hydrogen to make this hydrogen economy develop? And I suppose it sort of depends where you are in the country, doesn't it, in terms of how quickly hydrogen will come on. So just thinking about the basics of how this will build up. So we have our industrial clusters in Teesside, Humber, in the northwest, South Wales, Southampton, and also other potential very large volume hydrogen production possibilities at places like Bacton out on the coast of Norfolk. So in those locations, in particular in Tees, Humber, and the northwest, we're developing CCUS infrastructure. So we're not talking about green electricity here going into hydrogen. We're talking about, for hydrogen production, taking natural gas, stripping out the hydrogen atoms, sequestering the CO2 off into disused oil and gas infrastructure out in the North Sea. So making hydrogen in a different way, capturing the CO2, storing it away. And that will be extremely important, particularly for industrial decarbonisation. We are going to need enormous volumes of hydrogen And we make hydrogen in that way already in the world. Okay, there's an enormous hydrogen industry. It's just that the CO2 isn't sequestered away, and that's why there's been this enormous focus on getting that carbon capture and storage infrastructure sorted out. Also in those locations and in other locations across the UK, we have obviously huge offshore wind development, and over time the cost of green hydrogen production using those green electrons will come down. As you increase the proportion of renewables that you need to get into the electricity network, you increase the proportion of the time where we're generating the green electricity, but it's not needed in the electricity system. So think of kind of windy nights. No one's got the lights on, and there's a risk that we then waste that electricity. And instead of wasting it, you can convert that otherwise curtailed energy into hydrogen. There's a huge number of other factors that will mean that hydrogen production, green hydrogen production from renewable electricity starts to grow. Things like constraints in the electricity network, the transmission network, the time taken to bring on that large scale electricity transmission infrastructure. So through my job, I'm talking to lots of potential hydrogen producers. I'm aware of some very large scale green hydrogen production projects that are being planned because it's going to take so long to get the transmission infrastructure sorted out. So if you think about the north of Scotland, massive wind potential, not very good electricity transmission infrastructure, it will take years to develop. If you want to bring on that wind energy development, you can use that energy for the next, 5, 6, 7 years, however long it takes to get the transmission infrastructure in place. You can use those green electrons to make hydrogen instead. You can then potentially blend it into the national grid gas transmission pipelines. So I take the point, and it's an area where we need to really work hard to make sure that hydrogen production comes on, but I see the potential to satisfy the growth of the hydrogen economy through the hydrogen production. And in fact, in the Capital Hydrogen Programme that we launched a feasibility study for, we showed that in the east of England, London and the southeast, there was a potential to produce between 100 and 170, can't remember the units, but way more than we needed. So we must have been talking in terms of terawatt hours, in fact. And we showed that in the London area alone, we would need around 40 terawatt hours of hydrogen by 2050. So huge potential for hydrogen production, even in the southeast, which isn't necessarily somewhere you think about when you're thinking about hydrogen production.
Fantastic. Does anybody else want to come in on that? Yeah, Bob.
I think gentlemen has sort of hit the key issue. When I was working in oil and gas, we always used to talk about the elephant in the room being the price of oil. And now we're looking at hydrogen. The elephant in the room is obviously the price and availability of green electricity. Now that's going to, I would personally, I live in Somerset, I'm in Minehead, and I would like to see major renewable projects such as the tidal energy schemes for the Severn Estuary come to fruition. That was studied, many different schemes were studied 10 years ago, and what we ended up with was a nuclear power station. So yes, I would like to see more expansion of major green energy infrastructure schemes.
Okay, great, thank you. Was that helpful? Thank you. It's a complicated area, isn't it? Any other questions,
Can I just have one comment there?
Sorry, beg your pardon, I didn't know you wanted to go in.
Just going back to some of these comments. We've been constraining renewable energy in gigawatts and gigawatts for a decade now. The energy is there, and what we've missed is the storage bit. But again, this has been known for 10 years. ITM Power did an energy storage project in Germany 10 years ago. We put an electrolyser in, we took surplus wind, we made the hydrogen, we blended it, we put it into the grid. We did a COP26 regional event at ITM just after I rejoined. The presentation that the CEO gave was the same presentation from 10 years earlier. 10 years ago, we mapped out the intersection of the high voltage electricity grid with the high pressure gas grid, because they're the nodes where you would do your energy storage. We mapped it out for everybody and nobody listened.
Okay,
the gas grid is the biggest energy store in the country.
Okay, great. I'm going to draw, just because we've got 4 minutes and I've got 2 questions at the back, and I'm going to try and get both of them in. That gentleman there first, please, and then colleague over there. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. So quick questions, and I'm going to ask you for super speedy answers as well, so we've only got 4 minutes.
Thank you. Sorry?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So my name is Roberts. I'm with Rise Hydrogen. We're part of the vertically integrated companies that Barry alluded to earlier, owned by Joe Bamford. We're responsible for the supply and distribution part of the supply chain. To me, the buzzword of this discussion is scale, and I wanted to just touch on the supply chain side. We're seeing the scale of the industry is quite small at the moment, and it's leading to long lead times on individual components, which is slowing down the scale of the industry as a whole. I wondered whether the panel are also experiencing this on their end, and what their plans are to help scale up the manufacturing industry for hydrogen.
Thank you very much. Scalability, who wants to come in on this? Going to have to be brusque answers. Sally?
Scale, well, we have a number of flagship schemes for hydrogen, so building of hydrogen pipelines basically. We've got the Northwest, we've got the East Midlands, and we also have a proposal for 100% hydrogen pipeline in this region, so stretching from Thurrock, going right, possibly past the front door, and into Newham in London. So we're pushing ahead with hydrogen pipeline plans, and obviously with a hydrogen supply in place, we can help to bring on the industry. Really, it's the vital connection between the supply and the demand.
Okay, thank you.
I think there are problems in supply chain in all industries at the moment. I think in answer to the question, what we do see is a difficulty in the supply chain for PEM stacks.
Okay, really quick.
Just from our point, yeah, we're just waiting for government certainty by 2026 so we could scale up. We do 500,000 boilers every year. If we get that commitment, we could plan to 2026 and ramp it right up.
Fantastic, thank you very much. We're going to take this last question as a super speedy one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
I'm Scott S. lecturer in the only energy management program in the UK at the bachelor's level, which is CU London. One of us wants to say that the panel discussion has been very interesting. I spoke to Alex earlier and Worcester and the Bosch paper, excuse me. My question is just very briefly, the message for our students. We are bringing hydrogen awareness into our curriculum, and on our energy management program, we don't teach the engineering side. That's for colleague of the teachers at the main Coventry University. We have a hydrogen fuel cell on our table, but from the non-engineering perspective, excuse me, what message would you like to say that we should change the perception of the public with regards to hydrogen as a fuel source?
Okay, great question. What's our one message to the public to change the perception? I'm going to ask each of you. You've got one sentence because you've only got one message. That's what you asked for, isn't it? Yeah. I'm not being unfair. I sort of am, but you get my drift. Okay, so it's one sentence to change the perception of hydrogen. Sally, I'm starting with you.
We won't reach net zero unless we have low carbon hydrogen.
Bam.
Safer and better for the planet.
Lovely.
I think current public perception for hydrogen is that they think of the Hindenburg, and that needs to change.
Great. Slightly depressing, but good.
Great technology, clean air, clean fuel.
Lovely. They should be in marketing, shouldn't they? Do you know what I mean?
Can I make one comment on the Hindenburg? Right, sorry.
Really bloody
10
quick.
years ago, everybody used to throw the Hindenburg word at us, and it's absolutely ridiculous. And a few months ago, the DFT published a consultation document, and there was a quote in there from someone mentioning the Hindenburg.
Well done,
Absolutely
DFT.
ridiculous.
Well done, DFT.
Absolutely
That's my
ridiculous.
third job of the day, isn't it? Right, I'm drawing this session to a close. What a great start to the day. What amazing collaboration with you guys. We're so proud to be here.